session.
Now joining the IB system.
Perfect.
Committee meeting.
Glad we got that figured out, John.
Okay. Always a little trouble getting in, but that's the way the world works in the 21st century. How's everyone? Can you hear me?
You sound
okay, perfect.
Alexis, it says Taj, but I'm going to assume it's really you.
It is me. I was also having some Zoom difficulties today and got through by signing into Taj's account for some reason. So we will change that. Thanks for flagging.
And somehow yours says Mickey Mouse. Right?
Oh, Christopher, you're killing me here.
Good to see y'all.
Here we do. I see we have about 15 attendees here and we are live. I'll defer to you, John, when you're ready to call the meeting to order.
Okay, how many IB members do we have? I'm only seeing 4 on my screen. Is that the number? Okay. I think we should move ahead. I think some others are going to join as well. So are we live now? Okay. So I will call this committee meeting to order. It is a couple minutes after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm John Chelmanak. I'm chairing the review committee here. Let's have a quick roll call of the members that are present, and then we'll make note as others add in.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. Board Member Reddy.
Present.
Board Member Ross.
Present.
Board Member Spotted Elk.
Present.
And Board Member Chelmanak.
Present. Can we take a peek through and see if there's any other board members who need to be pulled over from the public? Sometimes we have board members who end up there as we check in.
I'm looking through the attendee list and not seeing any designated board members present, unless someone is capturing something different.
Okay, well, let's begin as we always do with the land acknowledgement. And we acknowledge that King County is located on the unceded traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. We honor this land and its people, past and present, and we are committed to directing funding and resources to organizations that are led by and support Native and Indigenous people. So with that, this is our first opportunity to take a look at the revised version of the proposed 10-year plan. We'll be having a series of meetings here again on Thursdays to walk through some of the elements of the plan. I think that Alexis will probably be going over some of that, the detail of when those meetings will be for the public. I do know from the standpoint of our IB board members, I heard some promotion in media of the fact that this meeting was coming up. So anything you say can and used to be will against you in the court of public opinion. Just kidding. But I will say I was quite surprised one day to have an email from a friend of mine saying, "Oh, I saw you on TV the other day." And I went, "How?" and then realized, of course, that these meetings are open to the public, as they should be. They're open to the media to cover, and there's quite a bit of interest in all of this. So we welcome everybody to that, and actually appreciate the ability to get coverage in the media so others know what's going on. Alexis, I'm going to turn it over to you. Give us a general update to go until about 3:25-ish or so, and then we'll start into taking a look at the sections of the plan, kind of going through section by section, if you will, and the ability for our IB members to ask some questions or to give their comment. So I'm going to turn that over to you now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chair. So good afternoon, everybody, on a very, very beautiful Thursday. For the record, my name is Alexis Mercedes Rank, and also seeing that board member Merritt has officially joined, so I want to keep that on the record. Good afternoon. Just to provide some overall updates, I see our clerk has officially joined as well. Good afternoon, Austin. To provide some overall updates, we have restructured these sessions and have put together a schedule for this subcommittee to take up components of the plan in a phased fashion. So today's components of the plan up for discussion and included on the publicly posted packet of materials include pages 1 through 25 of the plan. Purpose for doing this is to keep this subcommittee focused. There's a lot of content to review in the plan, and want to make sure that each of these sessions with the board are focused on elements, and so there's time to do a thorough review and provide comments and proposed changes. So today's session is focused on discussing the beginning part of the plan, so pages 1 through 26, which includes missions and acknowledgement, executive summary, scale and scope of challenge, the current state description and vision for future state, goal, and then metrics and measurement. The following sessions, so for next week's Thursday session, we'll be discussing the activity tables for years 1 and 2, and then 3 and 5. And then at the regular implementation board meeting on May 10th, there will be a full discussion of the 5-year plan and a general update. During your subcommittee session on the 11th, that is where you'll be taking up content related to resources, what we currently fund, reprocurement, transforming what we fund, and what KCRHA would do with new funding. On the 18th, you all are slated for the subcommittee to vote to recommend a revised version to the full implementation board. And I know there's a special session being scheduled to have the full implementation board do their formal vote to recommend a revised version of the 5-year plan to the governing committee. The governing committee is scheduled to meet June 1st. So that's a quick look of overview of timeline. And any questions on that piece before we jump into a walkthrough of the first piece of the 5-year plan for today's discussion?
Sorry.
Alexis, yeah, go ahead, Christopher. Go ahead.
Can I just clarify the meetings on the 11th and the 18th? Those follow-up meetings are using this time slot that's already been booked, or those new meetings?
Those using this time slot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
John Mercedes, Alexis, I'm sorry. What were so for the upcoming scheduled IB meeting, what was your hope around that? Like, what is that going to be a fairly short briefing in which you are just talking about the schedule and plan? Do you want to have a robust conversation? What are your wishes there?
I would almost flip that around for you all as board members, as you all have been working through this subcommittee and establishing and working through revisions. I would say from a staff perspective, it would be great if there was a formal report or update from the work of this subcommittee to the full board, but happy to adjust and bring forward topics and support a conversation however the board sees fit. So apologies for turning that back to you, but I think from staff preference, we'd love to see an update from progress of this subcommittee at the full board.
And I believe Simha and others, I'll make a brief report on what the committee has been doing within that. But really, from the standpoint, I think the chair's are going to drive that meeting. So, we'll, hopefully only a few, we only have a few IB board members who are able to attend these committee meetings. So I think having the opportunity for IB board members to weigh in would be helpful. But I know we also have a number of action items, or at least I believe the bylaws scheduled for that meeting.
Yes, thanks, John. I was asking
Yeah.
because there were several other items for that meeting, trying to figure out, but that's very helpful. Trying to carve out enough time.
Okay.
Absolutely. If there are topics related to the 5-year plan that folks are identifying that they'd like to bring before the full board for earlier discussion, I think that's absolutely something we could support.
The other here, Alexis, is I know members of the public, provider community, others might be interested in giving their input. They will be interested in giving their input into the revised plan. I think we would be having public comment at the meeting on the 10th. I also would say that the best way, I believe, to comment would be written comment to get that in. And Simha, depending on how many people sign up at the May 10 meeting, it's possible that we'd have to shorten the ability of people to testify. I mean, they usually expect 2 minutes. We might, like the legislature does, take that down to a little shorter time. But that's why I say written is the best. And Alexis or Austin, where should any written comments be directed?
Yeah, so we're currently trying to figure that out as it is. So for just right now, we will have it go to my email for the time being until we figure out a better solution. I'm currently working with IT to figure that out. So my email, I'll put it in the chat for everyone, but it's also on the website and the implementation board page to find as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So Austin, would you be forwarding any comment you get on just in its original form to the implementation board, or would you be sort of summarizing it?
I will not. I will.
Some way?
I won't alter it. However, I will package it and then submit it at end of day Friday. That's how.
Excellent.
So whatever I get for the week, it'll then go to you end of day Friday. I have a little
Excellent.
draft that's scheduled sent out.
Thank you.
Okay, Alexis, why don't we launch into the presentation here? Appreciate it much.
Absolutely. So today I'm actually going to be, apologies, Chair. I do see board member Spotted Elk has her hand raised.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to get clarification as far as I wasn't sure like if Jaja was able to participate. There's just a lot of confusion right now, and I'm just trying to get clarity around who's allowed to come, who's not, and it's kind of confusing for me. And I appreciate any help in that area to find out what's going on.
Thank you, board member Spotted Elk. If Jaja is acting today as an LEC alternate, I believe that should be fine, but I would also defer to the chair.
Yeah, the tact I have taken on this is they're going through the process of nomination is the members have gone through with the governing committee and they've been given their imprimatur. So I've invited them to participate, even though we may end up, I'm not even sure where we are on that, to tell you the truth. I haven't received an update. So, but the more people, the better it is from the IB standpoint, from my perspective as chair.
Just on that point, John, she's in the attendees, and I think you may want to bring her to be a panelist.
Yep. I am just seeing her come over. So that's looks like she is in the panelist queue now.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. It just helps to get clarification because I just want, equitable access to all the information, because there are, like, I missed the bylaws meeting, and if she had that information, she would have showed up, and something came up for me. So just to offer explanation and apologize.
Okay, so the record will affect that Jaja is here, and if we can, let's get into the presentation.
Perfect. So to that end, I'm actually going to be sharing my screen, no fancy slides for today, just directly drawing from materials that were posted on the implementation board page. This is the packet that was posted of the initial 26 pages, and we'll be doing a walkthrough area by area through the plan. And so if you'll give me one moment, can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Fabulous, thank you. And so as we go through, please feel free, I do have my eye on the raised hand emoji, so please feel free to come off mute or raise your virtual hand as we walk through the areas of the plan. And so taking us through the beginning part, we have our table of contents here. We'll be starting here at our acknowledgement section. Acknowledgements is brief, but wanted to cover and acknowledge the many people that have weighed into the plan, as well as thank the public for the direct responses they've given throughout the planning process. Our executive summary provides an overview of including goal, background, and context, naming specifically KCRHA's role, understanding the challenge, and noting some of the modeling work that is done by the Washington State Department of Commerce, the work that is included related to how we are looking to optimize funding. So looking at how the plan is really rooted in the existing budget, but ways that we're looking at exploring new funding streams, namely through expansion of foundational community supports billing, but then also exploring new fund sources. And then what's following is a section just about KCRHA, our mission statement, theory of change, and land acknowledgement. Pausing there, if there is any feedback related to these initial sections.
So again, any feedback? I am not very good at seeing the raised hands, so I apologize for that. But is there any feedback for these? Just jump in.
I have some feedback or questions regarding the land acknowledgement.
Okay, go ahead.
I messaged Sema Reddy. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. And just having, because at the retreat, and we had some people zoom in on the link and do a land acknowledgement, was very beautiful, and the song that was shared and the good words from Lorna. And I would like to see more organizers, Indigenous organizers, to participate, including the Duwamish tribe and other Coast Salish in these land acknowledgements, rather than just reading them. They would help ground us in our work and bringing culture into this space.
Okay, I think you're not asking for the language in here to be changed. You're asking as we go forward to perhaps involve other people who are from Native or Indigenous to give their thoughts on this. Is that right, Juanita?
Well, regarding the land acknowledgements and any meetings like the retreat that we had recently for like you said, Native origins participating rather than just, well, everyone was at the retreat, and you remember the power, just others coming in and bringing that work and helping us.
So, yeah, and my point would be, so this is the land acknowledgement that I believe the Seattle City Council would read, the King County Council would read. This is a land acknowledgement that the governments have accepted and read. And so I think that's why we read this one specifically. I would agree with you that there are some nice ways that we might be able to involve more people and provide their thoughts on it. We also, I think, have to remember that we only have 2 hours a month generally to be with each other, and the time that we have to discuss and take action among ourselves is also very important.
Yes, and I appreciate everyone right now just taking this time to listen, being native, and I don't speak for everyone, but because we are limited in this time, it would be good to really bring others in that space and to have quality time together is the key. And so I'm just raising these concerns. And because of that systemic racism, you know, doing everything on paper and not bringing culture into this space is the point in making changes and transforming these systems and making it more qualitative.
Yeah.
If I could,
If it's okay, I just wanted to share, Juanita, thank you. It was incredibly moving land acknowledgement at our
Yes.
retreat, and I'd like to be able to continue that more. So yeah, we will find a way to improve the way that we do our land acknowledgements at our meetings and to bring more people in. So thank you for that, Juanita.
Is there any other, does anyone else have anything about the first part of the presentation from staff? Yes.
see, I see, but board member Merritt has.
Yes.
Please, Ben, please. Alexis, just one real, just procedural thing and then one substantive comment. I can't find this thing you're showing here posted online, and maybe some people in the public can't find it either. I'm looking at the one that was emailed to me, but I know that was partially embargoed, so I don't want to, I want to make sure I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at before I make too many comments. You maybe just want to paste that link in the chat or something like that, and then we can all just see it.
Absolutely, and happy to also, since I am sharing my screen, show where on our website this is currently located.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thank you for flagging.
Any others?
I will, so did we go through the executive summary?
I did quickly review the executive
Okay.
summary, so happy.
I
to
do
take
have a
comments.
substantive comment on that, which I can make, and then I think you can bring up after that. So I'll just start by saying thank you so much. You know, I really, really do feel like this revised plan has really come a long way and has reflected a lot of input that I, but more importantly, members of the community and the boards generally have made. So I really appreciate that. And I am so supportive of this overarching goal of bringing people inside as quickly as possible. And so I really kind of just, I think one of the most important things really in this whole plan is that kind of, personally, that one goal, definitely, but then also that section in the middle of the executive summary on the KCRHA's role. Maybe you can just scroll back up there a little bit. You know, I think that the KCRHA does have a very specific role, especially in the immediate term, for managing and providing our emergency shelter capability. We've seen that how important that is in the winter emergency that we had, which we have every winter, and also again just now with the hotel crisis that we had. And I really believe that's a core goal that should be at the level of these three. I do think that those three goals here are really good. I mean, this is, and I know that the first goal, we do include coordinating activities across shelters to make sure that they're really good and they're high quality. I think that's great, but I would love to see a specific goal around increasing the capacity of our shelter and emergency housing and system so that we can deal with the acute crises that occur from time to time, like in the winter and recently at the hotels, but also with the ongoing crises that happen every day that somebody is outside. That's one piece that I would love to add to the top. And then I think there actually is a piece on the bottom, which goes back to the original version of the plan, the very, very first drafts of the plan, where we did talk quite a lot about the need for affordable housing. I know that that is really not within the direct purview of the RHA, but all of us know that no amount of shelter capacity is ever going to solve the homelessness issue. Homelessness fundamentally is caused by a lack of homes. And I do think that we have a advocacy role as the government organization that best understands the needs of very low income, high needs people to advocate for more and greater, deeply affordable housing. I think that is, those two things, I think, would really take this very clear statement of the KCHA's role and really align it with what I've been hearing from the community. So I'll just leave that there. This is like, I know that this executive summary is really a summary of many things to come, but just so you know where I'm coming from, I really love this direction. I think it's really great. And I think those two things could just get it to the next level.
Okay. Any other comment on this? And staff would take that back as possibility for including or building up on this. Is there any other? I am not seeing or hearing any, so if
John,
we
I would
can,
like to add one thing. I had I'm sorry about that.
it's all right.
It's a very small item, but I think it's highly relevant. In the, bullet number 2 or point number 2, it's coordinate our network of service providers. I haven't read the full document yet. It just came out at noon. I've been stuck in meetings since noon, so forgive me, I'll get caught up. I would add to this, if it's, so it's not implicit, but it's stated, it's coordinate and effectively manage, because that is your role as the RHA. And coordinating is one thing, but effectively managing is meaning timely payments and contracts and all the things that need to be happening. That's definitely a big part of your role. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any others?
Just-
Unmute. Yes.
Sorry,
Go
just
ahead,
on that
Simo.
one. You know, the effectively manage piece, I sort of see as coming under, you know, our first role, like helping improve outcomes of individual service providers, making sure that they've got the staff tools, the support they need. The management part, like we're not necessarily managing the, like
Right.
this, and the second part is really sort of the connecting pieces between providers. That's it was just more of a semantic thing on my end.
So I think that there's a request that at some point, somewhere within either these 3 points or within the executive summary, to include this coordinate and effectively manage. And again, I think that's staff's job to look at that and to determine how that might be accomplished.
Absolutely can do. I think to
Okay.
board member Reddy's point, part of what we were intending, and again, this 1, 2, and 3 kind of structure is our way of trying to move away from having those 8 goals that we've been talking about per se, and moving towards having one overarching goal, but have some way to distill and talk about the levels of change that are the 5-year plan is trying to take up. And so absolutely received to the point that board member Ross raised about our role being able to just effectively manage and give providers the tools to be able to best carry out the work. So I think we can absolutely implement that language change, but include it under kind of that area 1 around individual service provider organizations.
Okay. Let's keep moving then. I'm not hearing anybody else.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. And so taking us beyond, we have this about section that's very brief, and also wanted to uplift that the land acknowledgement that was included in this draft of the plan is what is also included on our website, and also want to uplift it. There's any edits or suggested changes board members spotted out that you have to this, would definitely appreciate your input here. And so moving us into the first big area, this is our scale and scope of the challenge section. This section is our overhaul of the initial kind of methodology piece. In the original draft of the plan that was published in January, I believe this section was 11 pages, and now we have it down to a very concise 3 and a smidge. The first section is a summative look at the variety of methodologies related to how to count and measure homelessness, looking at from point in time count to cross systems analysis, to also looking at the modeling work done by Washington State Department of Commerce and Cloudburst. The following sections are related to understanding who is experiencing homelessness, so racial disproportionalities and uplifting experiences of a variety of subpopulations as well, and different physical abilities, health conditions, and so on. And then we do have a limitations section, understanding what we currently are seeing when it comes to limitations in administrative data sets and some of the improvements we'd like to make related to how to have better data. And then lastly, our work in memoriam, acknowledging the 310 folks who passed away while experiencing unsheltered homelessness in 2022. And with that, I'm already seeing hands, Chair. So I see a hand from Board Member Merritt and then Board Member Ray.
Sorry,
Okay.
mine was just left up.
Okay. Simha, do you want to
Um,
comment?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
First, I generally like this section. And I like that you talk about how there are many ways to count, and all of them are pretty terrible, but they're all very concerning in terms of the numbers they lead us to. But in that chart, the first three are really point in time counts, like snapshot pieces, and the second two numbers in that chart, the 41,000, the 53,000, are annualized counts. And even though that's written into it, I think people who are just going to glance at it at first are going to be confused and be like, oh my God, the numbers range anywhere from 11,000 to 50,000. This is crazy. When in fact it's point in time versus annualized. So I might consider breaking that into a separate box. I don't know, whatever visual thing you can figure out. The other thing I had was, if you could scroll down a little bit. When a little further, sorry. When we talk about the limitations on data, right? I am really glad we talk about this, right? Like how difficult it is to get strong data in these areas. And my hope is that one of the things that we can add into either this section or later on, but I think would be helpful in this section, is a commitment to improving our data analysis and like data gathering. Understanding sort of there's many different approaches that we are able to take, but I think that's one of our core functions, to be able to understand the problem on an ongoing basis. So yeah, can we get better at data as a goal in there?
Yes, thank you for that. And so what I'm hearing, just to reflect back, we can work on clarifying that table to really make it clear around like snapshot versus annualized. And as you will see, we have a number of initiatives throughout the plan that I know we've been talking about that are related to improving data outcomes, but can absolutely make it clear around. And we as a team are definitely focused on wanting to improve data collection methods. Thank you.
I think that my takeaway from this data chart here is that we don't really know, right? There's all these different sources. But this data here, all of them are largely measures of people who are experiencing homelessness in some degree, at a point in time over the course of a year. But it's not, given that the focus of the plan is really on unsheltered homelessness and bringing people inside, I think that we don't have good data on that, right? Only the PIT count had specifically measures of unsheltered homelessness. It's a subset of the 13,000 that were listed there. And that just has to be a focus. You can't manage what you can't measure, I think is the business school adage. And we've got to figure out how can we have a better grip on how many people are currently experiencing unsheltered homelessness. The city of Seattle does publish data on encampments. There are sources out there. I don't think it's an impossible thing to be doing. And I think it's absolutely critical that the authority, given the focus of this plan, starts to be able to generate and report regularly on that particular measure. So, this section here isn't really where that would go, but I think it's something for us to keep in mind that on our most important goal, we really don't have good data at this time.
I think we are all in agree with that.
You know,
And at some point, it is helpful to be able to point that out. But and again, sort of segmenting the groups to know that unsheltered homelessness, which is truly the population that we're looking at, I think, you know, somehow working on that would be good. Other comments from the IB? Juanita, I saw you just come off of and into video, or at least you popped up onto my screen. So do you have something? And I want to say I share what you had put in the chat about the number of people who have passed away while being unsheltered.
Yeah, and just always grateful for everyone. I just want to echo what was already said. Thank you for raising those concerns, and I believe they're legitimate. And always building community and partnerships, true partnerships. We're not tokenizing anybody or any other organizations, and really collaborating together and listening and learning to have those conversations together and being able to be more effective and impactful for our region, and really set an example for other regions, and building, saving lives, and having just housing justice and racial justice. Anyway, that's all I would say. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other comment? Just open up and go if you want. I am not hearing any, so Alexis, I think we can continue to move.
Well, and just to also close out this section, we'll definitely be taking this back also to the community impact team. I know we're looking at bringing on I can make a request to our chief community impact officer to circle back to next week's session and talk about how we currently measure and regard unsheltered homelessness and what potential avenues for continued measurement throughout the course of the plan can look like. So happy to take that as a next step to be directly responsive. Thank you, Board Member Meritz. And so the following section goes into a bit of discussion on current state on, again, these three levels. So looking at what's happening on our individual service provider organizations, network of homelessness services, and then system to system connections. And this was our way to kind of distill and talk about some of the issues currently facing addressing homelessness. And so
Alexis, could I just interrupt? So this actually, if anybody is looking at their agendas, we're actually moving through this a little bit on the quicker side than I thought we would, which I think is great. And so we are actually into what we were thinking would be the 4 o'clock hour. And this is the first item in that, if anybody's wondering where we are in the with the agenda. We're ahead of time.
Well, I love to hear that. Thank you, Chair. With that, I will take us to the first section. So our description of talking about what's happening at individual service provider organizations. This section describes a bit of what we've talked about at the implementation board presentation. And a lot of this was actually gleaned and understood from the variety of engagement sessions that we held through last summer into the fall. So really understanding what is currently happening in our individual service provider organizations. So this section includes discussion about the impacts of the global pandemic on service provider organizations, discussion about the status of wages for frontline staff and staffing vacancies and burnout. There's also discussion here about the status of being able to carry out trauma-informed care, person-centered services, and desires for increased training in order to be able to carry that out. I'm going to talk through the following two sections as well, and then maybe we'll pause and discuss this section as a full package. So following the discussion on individual service provider organizations, we have the network of homelessness services. This section of the three is the largest, largely because that's our big role overseeing the homelessness service response system. And so we, following this, have a graphic here that talks about our what we consider the healthy continuum of care. So trying to really outline how the system in an ideal sense kind of works, where we talk about here are kind of the front door areas to the system, the opportunities for stabilization once entering the system, and then what is the exit out into the system and into a permanent housing option. And so that's what this page really lays out, the kind of connective tissue between different programs and how somebody may go through the system. This was generated in response to a lot of feedback and just wanting to get the general public more knowledge and information around how folks may flow through the homelessness response system. And what follows is talking a bit about some of the existing challenges related to data and reporting, and looking at how we can improve data and reporting and just technology to support more coordination between those providers as folks do go through this full continuum and navigate through services. So there's discussion about the build out of a by name list tool and supportive data infrastructure, again, to support coordination between providers. Following that, there's discussion on current temporary housing interventions, and we link to and discuss the regional services database, which is a tool that KCRHA has developed and is publicly available. And then discussion of different temporary housing interventions, including emergency shelter, and some identification of how there may be subtypes of emergency shelter, including a variety of factors based on program design. With that, also noting transitional housing and rapid rehousing as two other programmatic options. There's then an inclusion of a performance comparison of these three program types. These are included on the KCRHA dashboards. So looking at exits to permanent housing in 2022 for these three program types, the exit rate to permanent housing, average length of stay, and rates of return to homelessness. Following this, there's a section that touches on new temporary sheltering and housing options, where we do identify the estimated need for how many units King County needs to bring on board by the end of this effectual plan, and also a statement just in full identification that when we look at the current inventory of our temporary housing and sheltering options compared to scale of need, our region cannot afford to lose any existing capacity regardless of program type. And what follows also is some description of in full identification of the urgency to develop additional temporary housing options. We wanted to lay out some of the process involved with bringing on board new programming, from identifying and acquiring funding to site, to identifying a location and siting with community support, and then developing referral pathways and subpopulation specific services, and then some of the partnership work that we need to do across sectors in order to make program bringing on board new temporary sheltering and temporary housing options. We have the sub-regional gaps work that has been done, where we include a breakdown and look of sub-region and number of temporary shelter or housing units across each sub-region, and then also a brief analysis on the subpopulation gaps, primarily rooted in and looking at what our regional services database findings were, and wanted to also take an opportunity to talk about some of the successes that we see when it comes to the work happening between service providers. So acknowledging the increased collaboration between service providers in the COVID-19 pandemic, the success of the family shelter intake line, collaborations between providers and healthcare, faith-based communities support, the EHVs, and the strong partnership between service providers to make successful lease-ups happen, and then some of the different convenings and gatherings of providers. The following section then details system-to-system connections, where we really try to highlight what is the homelessness response system connection to other systems, from the healthcare system, public health, educational systems, criminal legal, and some of the coordinated care that happens there. We take some moment to identify a number of the positive steps that have happened in our region, from the regional crisis response program, LEAD, medical respite, community courts, and some of the work KCRHA has done to convene system partners since we've been stood up, but also identifying how we can improve system-to-system coordination to better support individuals. And what follows is some description looking at how we continue to see overlap and when we're looking at relationships between, for example, incarceration and homelessness, and supporting folks as they're in transition, also looking at healthcare and school districts as well. So this following section really details and makes the cases why we need to improve our system-to-system connections. So those are the three levels and narratives and data that we've put together. And I will pause here for feedback on these three areas.
Okay, and this really is much more a overview of, in a lot of ways, of how the agency is acting. So, correct?
Yes.
And its philosophy toward the solutions.
This is in these sections are intended to kind of baseline and set the stage, saying this is how current state looks across these three levels. Here's what we're seeing currently at individual service provider organizations, our network of homelessness services, and then the status of in relationship to other systems. Okay, questions, comments on this area of the 10-year plan, five-year plan, excuse me. Simha, go ahead, please.
Couple of, I really like your continuum of care, like organizational graphic, right? I know that's not a new thing, but like helping people sort of organize this idea of the front door stabilization and then like long-term, permanent housing and the supports needed there. I just like it as a general approach. Gosh, there's something else that I really I'm sorry, my mind just blanked on me. I wish I'd written this down. There were like two like very like dumb minor things. One was like, you know what, I will send it to you in email. There was like a broken link that I'll send you, and then there was a one number that was off, like on number of medical respite beds to double check on. But yeah, that'll send via email just because it's very tiny. But overall, I really appreciated this section. Oh, the other thing. You're sort of bringing together emergency shelter like in a broader umbrella, like all types of emergency housing shelter, et cetera, as one under one category with a wide diversity of types within them, I think is helpful. As opposed to, in our initial plan where we like specified every single, tried to specify every type of emergency shelter that existed.
Okay, thank you. I see Juanita does have her hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just have an increase in the medical respite beds. And the reason I say that is just recently I seen a member over at the Chief Seattle Club. He was having seizures and he kept going to the emergency room. So obviously he's getting the medical care. And it was just difficult to see because it seemed like he was just having difficulty getting connected to get the support services. And whether it's detoxification, and I know with the new work in the King County with the residency beds for mental health, and I hope like substance abuse, because a lot of people are dying and we see that in the community all the time, withdrawals and opioids and smoking fentanyl, and it's just such a big crisis. It would be good to really work more and being able to provide those spaces for beds and just to get that kind of medical care, I think is critical and essential in our times right now, and addressing the mental health states. I don't know. I know in the past, I had relatives that were being hospitalized, almost dying. Oh, and it was such a terrible thing, and really wanting to stay sober, really wanting to live, and just because there was no beds for him, so just having to go back out into the streets, and that cycle is such a hard to break. So to offer any kind of support and more collaboration with partnerships, and I know in the meetings that Ms. Summers did in her collaboration and gathering all that data, I know the people at the Harbor View were really wanting to do more work around that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
So I'd like to just follow up a little bit on that, if it's possible. I think it's kind of, and maybe it's in here, but just it's important to, I think, to identify what services are provided in a medical respite bed. You know, what are those services? Are they more medical, again, medical? And if it's non-medical, where do they fall in, say, the behavioral health system? So I have trouble understanding necessarily the flow into something that would be a medical respite bed. So this it may be in here. I've given a cursory reading, but I'm just following up on what Juanita said. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for that question, Board Member Chalmanek. And I know I might give her a moment, but one of our planners on our team has been working around medical respite options. But I also know that Board Member Reddy has similarly been working and maybe can speak to respite.
Yeah, Simha, can you speak to that? Because I think it will help people understand that there's an element of the system that deals with people undergoing these issues, and a part of the system that will deal with people who may be having some of the same issues, but they're dealt with in a different area. Or maybe I'm just completely missing the point.
Sure, I'll speak to it very briefly. Sorry, Christopher, Ben. Medical respite can mean a wide variety of things. If you look across the country, there are many programs, widely varying sort of resources that call themselves medical respite. Here in this county, we have probably one of the strongest medical respite programs in the nation. And it is tiny though. It is like 37 or 38 beds total. And it has a very specific purpose in terms of helping people discharging from who don't need hospital level care, but also can't survive, don't have a place to receive home health care, for example. Somebody needs IV antibiotics for 6 weeks, as an example. Very occasionally people on palliative care or hospice care. It is a tremendous program, and often somewhat difficult to get into because of the small number of beds. But that's very medically oriented, physical health oriented. In terms of mental health, we've got like DSC's Crisis Solution Center. Like, I think one of the things we've seen is the recent passage of the Crisis Center levy for King County, which I think will be a tremendous boon in terms of helping us with the behavioral health crisis piece. And then there's many people who would benefit from just something that's not quite at the level of medical respite that has on-site 24-hour nursing type care, but could benefit from something a little bit lower where somebody is available nearby. A lot of gradations of potential care available. So I don't know if that's helpful, John.
No, I think I do think it is. Other comments? And to the extent that anything gets put back or gets added, it would be great. But again, it's just a me personal. There are these multitudes of things that seem to do some of the same, but they take people from different places, if you will. Other comments or questions from the board members?
This is Juanita.
Yeah,
I think there's a lack of informed trauma care, and I really like the idea of doing more trainings in all systems, and I've witnessed there's a lot of harm being done and not getting people the right services and being able to connect them to the right people, and they just get sent out the door. And just even with the severe weather conditions that we're all facing in different times and different seasons, and I think just to be able to start that work in preparation. I know it's sunny out right now and it's warm, but a lot of times when it's really cold, remember we have that bone chilling rain cold, and people were slumped over, and you could see the symptoms, the hypothermia with the redness of the skin, and because of being outdoors for prolonged periods of time, it really is a miracle that there's not a whole lot of deaths, and that because of these combinations of that impact people and our relatives that are outside. So I'd like to, in the indigenous community, it's just difficult because they're not handed off to anybody else and collaborating and building those partnerships. I don't think there's enough communication that happens, and really people need to get more, like the Indian Health Board Clinic, I'll use that as an example, and people who come out of the hospital, and I had family too, but he was fortunate to have me as a family member to help my brother in his journey at his end of life death. And it was difficult then. So I can't imagine people who have nowhere to go, nowhere to, and it's such a sickening feeling to have despair and just to feel that darkness, and people need hope. And whatever peer support communities, I know there's a whole wide range where people can offer their expertise and really making those connections for others and being so that we're saving lives. And I know that Benjamin always talks about getting people at least inside, and that does a tremendous amount of work in itself, just to have a safe place, just to know you're safe, just for a period of time while you can heal, I think is critical in these times. Anyways, I just real passionate because it hurts me, and I know it hurts you as well. That's why we're here together, to collaborate together and to really organize with other communities. And this work is, so I just want to raise that. And I think these are real legitimate questions. And thank you so much, Alexis, and everyone else on your team. I really do appreciate everyone.
Thank you, Juanita. Other board members with a question or a comment?
I think Ben had his hand up and then I did.
Okay, perfect. Ben and then Christopher.
Thanks. So I think this is a really helpful section to show here to kind of establish the baseline. As I reflected on my journey learning about the system, there's a couple things that I think might be helpful to really have in this plan. So one of the key things is the utilization of our current shelter system, which there's a lot of different data out there. My first meeting with Mark, they looked at me and said, our shelters are only 2/3 full. Then Jeff came and gave us a presentation saying we only have like 3 beds in all of the county. Now our system was put to the test with regards to the 250 people that were leaving the hotels, and we had nowhere for them to go. I think that it's true that our shelters are currently full and that we don't have anywhere for people to go. I know that changes day to day, but that's a really important piece of context. And as you think about our planning for the future, there's a lot of things in here about culturally appropriate options that are going to meet certain people's needs in various ways, different kinds of programs. But if we just acknowledge that right now we have nothing, then I think the focus will be on just building something to allow people to come inside now. And then once we get to the place where we have enough, we can figure about how do we optimize it and make it even better. But to me, in my mind, the need right now is really to try and create that as much as possible now. In keeping with that, I think there's a piece here that needs to be discussed around coordinated entry and other means of how people get into our shelter system. There's this section up above a little bit where we go into like the service providers and the broader network and all of that. But I think it would be really helpful to understand exactly how are people getting into the programs that they're in today. And we've heard a lot of feedback around coordinated entry and the need to try and optimize that. And I do think that things like coordinated entry will get easier once we have more inventory to offer to people. But in the immediate term, that's going to be an acute problem that has to get addressed quite a bit. And I just wanted to flag, so those are my 2 points in this section. And then I did want to flag that I had one more point on the executive summary section that maybe we can revisit at the end.
Okay, Chris, thank you. Christopher?
So over the course of this call, I've done like John and the others, I've done a cursory read, and it is much, much better. There's a couple things I want to point out, or in particular, it's finally dawned on me, one of the challenges with the previous document that also lent itself to being so big was that it was meant to be an educational document, and it did what I would almost argue a little editorializing, and that's fine, but it educated like a 3-credit class. It was a pretty hefty document. And as a business plan, that's what was so confusing. It was not actually a plan. It was an educational document. Like, I'm going to school you and then hopefully teach you what we're going to do. I still suggest this document, as lean as it is, and I know this is just one part of the new one, there's still some editorializing, like I'm going to educate you about the state of what's going on. And I think it's important if people want the context, but what's lacking is the actual plan. So it's framing up the problem, but that's not what the RHA is supposed to be doing necessarily. It's supposed to be solving the problem. And so the best example here is at the bottom of page 18. So you've given some hefty information about the utilization currently on previous, or what the counts are on page 8. Then you give the utilization of what shelters available, like 3,500 plus units. And then to Ben's point, we don't talk about what's currently in the pipeline, what's being filled at what occupancies. And then at the bottom of page 18, you give kind of the zinger, although I think you buried the lead, and it says the things we need to do is identify required funding, identify locations, and get community support, identify construction of the buildings, and develop a referral pathway. That's the game plan. I mean, but there's no explanation as to how you get there. And I thought, and that I know is what I'm hoping we're going to be seeing in this 5-year plan, is those details. And if you parsed out, and I want to be conscious of the way this may sound, if you parse out the educational piece and make that a sidebar, make that an addendum, even in an editorial fashion, you can color code it and make it like, a horizontal side about the issues associated with this. That's fine. The core, though, of what this plan needs to do is identify the path forward to fix the problem and what you're recommending to do. And if you can take some of the educational pieces out of it, move them to a separate, the core of what you're going to be doing, I still don't see. So in this first 26 pages, there's no indication. Again, at the bottom of 18, you've identified with those 4 bullet points what needs to happen. That to me is the game, the whole point. And it's not identifying that. And if it is, and it's coming later, which I'm imagining, Alexis, you're going to say it is.
Yes, Chair, may I chime in to
Please,
share?
please.
Okay,
Cut it any time.
Perfect. So I am going to screen share quickly. This was one of the slides from the meeting on, oh gosh, dates, your April meeting. So how we've structured the 5-year plan right now as it stands is having this introductory section for those who are MPA, MBA. This initial section kind of trying to talk about problem statements. And then getting to that point around like, here's where we want to go and here's how we're going to get there. So the following section, we'll have a statement on like, here's kind of the goal where we're headed. And then the section 6 is really how we get there. And that's what includes all of the action steps, including the tables, how we're measuring, what are the things that we're measuring against, and why we are doing each of these actions and how they tie into directly improving the measurements, if that makes sense. And so this section should really be regarded in MPA terms. Sorry, that's when I got my degree. So in terms of problem statement. So I hope that's a little bit helpful.
That does help quite a bit. So, okay, well then I appreciate that. It's still, there's a lot there. Okay.
Is there?
Give the floor back to Ben, who wanted to talk about the
well, I'm seeing Juanita, and Ben, you also have a comment. I want to come back and have a comment about what Christopher just said, but I'm going to give the other board members an opportunity. And kind of on the way we cycle through these, I'm going to let Juanita go next, and then Ben.
I just want to say really quick, I think it would be worth it because of the tribes being federal, tribal communities, and I think federal and state, and collaborating together and creating more opportunities for residential inpatient programs for substance abuse, and that would free up more space and for others for beds regarding those. And I think it would be worth it to collaborate and build a partnership with the local tribal communities. Like Muckleshoot is to the south, Puyallup is to the north, and we have the other tribes all around us. We have such a big community in this urban hub right here, and I believe we have that opportunity to create new pathways and learning to work together. Just because we're in King County doesn't mean that we can't collaborate with the tribes and organize with them and to create these new pathways. I think it would be really helpful. And also, I believe everyone can work better together. I don't know how you would do that, but I would encourage still have community listening sessions. Building community is such a key, essential to all this work because we're getting input from everyone and learning how to do that and being able to build together, I believe would help deal with some of these situations with the respite beds, and then also create more for people that are enrolled members, or even if they're not enrolled, to open up spaces in other places that need to save their lives. So anyway, that's what I'm going to always say, that create more, invite the tribes to these tables. I think it would be really benefit for everyone. Thank you. Okay,
Ben, did you have another comment?
Thanks, John. My comment was back on the executive summary. Do you want to go back there now, or do you want to continue talking about this context section?
Well, my comment is going to be kind of going back to the executive summary as well, but based on what Christopher said. So let's go with you first, and then we'll come back to me.
Okay, thanks. So just back to the bottom of page 6, Alexis, where it's the section on optimizing funding. I think this is really critical, and I know that it's happening. It's happening right now with the system rebid and with the contracting. This ties back to my comment on the budget, where I was disappointed that we weren't going to start optimizing things right now. But under this section here, it basically says we need to do more than we have available now, which is totally true. But I think that given that we have this plan, we need to really, this goal of ending unsheltered homelessness, we need to really think carefully about how can we create the most spaces for people with the current funding that we have, subject to a common level of humanity that we obviously aren't going to make anybody's situation worse, But if we can make somebody's situation better by bringing them inside, we should do that for as many people as possible. So I'd really love to see that here. I do recall from the previous year's budget analysis, there were these charts showing that our cost per bed for these programs were all over the place. There's a factor of 10x between the lowest and the highest. This feels like a really important exercise for the RHA to be doing, especially in the first year or two, to be able to make sure that we're looking at the lowest cost possible interventions, such that we can help the most possible people. I certainly think it would be great if we could provide the highest quality to everybody, but we are constrained, and we do need to act like we are in a crisis here. So I think that this optimizing funding piece, I love that we have this here. I would just like something specific about allocating our resources to the most efficient types of emergency shelter that we can.
Okay.
But I just want to say one last thing.
Yeah.
I love that we're having this level of conversation where it's like, because all of these things, these are the right headings, right? This is the right structure. I really like how this is laid out, and it makes it really effective for us to be able to like go and like add a bullet here as opposed to having to start from a brief. So I think this is fantastic, and I hope that comes across in how I'm being able to be very tactical in these comments.
So perfect. I want to go back and the conversation about this being an MBA or an MPA plan, a Master of Business Administration or a Master of Public Affairs, and it really is, and it should be, and that should be the guts of this. But I think at the very top, you have to say, what are we going to do? What's going to be the effect? And how much is it going to cost? And so I would really like to see that done within the plan. That's also what you're going to want to have within a media release. That's also what you're going to want to have if you're sending this via a letter to other elected officials, to the federal delegation, to whomever it happens to be. I think you're going to want to have that just right down to the cliff notes. I spent 15 years of my life supposedly explaining difficult problems in 30 seconds on the radio. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I think that really helps. Those three items: what are we going to do? What's the effect going to be? And what is the cost going to be? And that may be a range, but just go back and think about that, because we all get ourselves sort of caught up in, this is a large problem. It is a complex problem. It involves a lot of things to solve it. And we don't get right off the top to the, what are we going to do? What's the effect? And what's the cost? And I think that's what, so I'll make an effort to just say, really lift up that part of it. And it's the type of thing you can copy block, and you can start every correspondence with that. And I think we're going to get into some of that as we get into the discussion of metrics here. Is that next?
Next. That's a bit about how we're going to be measuring and what are kind of the key
Right.
system-wide performance measures. Yes.
Okay. So those are just my thoughts on it. So any other thoughts regarding where we are, or going back to executive summary? Okay, let's keep moving on. We are at 4:15, and I think this may end up being a place where there are a number of questions or comments. I would imagine it will be. So let's get into the metrics. That's up next.
Correct. I misspoke. We have our brief vision statement. So on page 24, you will find a vision statement for each of these three levels. When we look at the individual service provider level, looking at a vision where every service provider can adequately hire and retain trained staff that can carry out best practices when serving clients. When we look at our homelessness response system, we envision a system where all service providers are connected to one another through data, and there is sufficient homelessness services in every sub-region and serving disproportionately impacted subpopulations, and all people experiencing homelessness can receive services tailored to their unique needs. And then for systems to system connections, we're envisioning that there's a clear connection between the homelessness response system and other systems such as healthcare, legal, child welfare, foster care, education systems to ensure we're not missing opportunities to connect someone to services. What follows then is the final page of material, which states our overall goal and then how we get a brief a summary on how we're going to be getting there, including a introduction to the programs and partnerships initiatives, which is what we'll be really focused on next week, and then the funding transformation section. And what follows is how we're measuring progress for our goal, and this is the measurement section. This is where we have our measures for success. When we're looking across the system, all of these measures are driving towards how are we succeeding in housing people. So we have number of households accessing the homelessness response system. That's a way to be baselining and looking at what's the level of access, and then looking at number of households entering into homelessness response system, number of households exiting the homelessness response system to permanent housing, and then number of households returning to homelessness after 6, 12, or 24 months from a permanent housing exit. And following that, the number of temporary and permanent housing units in the system, and then the throughput of temporary housing and permanent housing units in the system. Where possible, we'll be breaking down each of these measures by household type with a look towards single adults, families with children, and youth and young adults, breaking down also by race and ethnicity, and then looking where we can also at breaking down by program type, so emergency shelter or housing, transitional housing, day centers, safe havens, rapid rehousing, diversion programs, safe parking, and so on.
Alexis, this may be a small semantical point, but you write in this paragraph, measures of success. Aren't these just merely our dashboards?
These are dashboards. Yes, we do dashboard a lot of these areas on our website.
Okay.
That could be a semantic change for sure.
I mean, I think that it is really important for us to have measures of success, but this is not it, right? The success would be nobody is unsheltered. So I think we have to have that. We have to have a measure of how many people are currently unsheltered, and that has to be the one thing that we are laser focused on every month. How many people are still unsheltered, and we keep going until that number goes down to 0, and then we work on one of the many other problems in our society. But this is the first one that we have to focus on. And I think to that point, Alexis, on the previous page, when I first read this, I was just surprised to see that our vision doesn't have nobody outside, right? I think that our vision has to be that we have a place for everybody to go, that there is no need for anybody to be outside.
Understood. I think what we were thinking with this section was maintaining that kind of trend of looking at how can we look at the 3 levels of structures, but having also this focus on our overall goal being around nobody outside. So I think that was how we were trying to thread the needle on that piece by maintaining the levels. But
well, I think that maybe this is more a fundamental question. So I appreciate how you're looking at it. So can you just scroll back up a little bit to the structure piece? I think that what in my mind, you're looking at this through the lens of like the service providers that operate the system, the response systems that those service providers use to access people. I think that the shelter network is itself a core part of the system. And that is one that we have to monitor and measure, just like we're measuring the service providers and the information systems and everything else. And you personally, I think, did that great work for the first time to actually like make a list of all the shelter and related reasons. I use the term shelter very broadly, but to all the resources that people, the places people to go, you made that first list. That list has got to grow into a system that could scale to provide some more for everyone to go. So I think that that physical network of places has to be a level in the system that we're laser focused on, because in reality, we could have the most amazing service providers in the world. We actually do have great service providers. We could have Owen told us we have the best HMS in the country. All these things are true, but if we don't have that physical place for people to go, none of this actually works. So I recognize that in the long term, we may get to a place where we have enough affordable housing. We no longer need shelters. And so we don't want to that stuff is all true. But as of right now, there's 7,000 people outside that have to get brought in. And we need a system, a physical network of places for those people to go. And I think that's got to be part of this future system. And then there needs to be a very clear metric, which is how many people are still outside. And I know that's very hard to measure, how many people are still outside by nature. But one thing we can measure is what is the utilization on our shelter network. And there is this very pernicious narrative around people who are refusing shelter. I get very frustrated when anybody talks about that. Oh, they're choosing to be outside. How can we even have that conversation when there is nowhere for them to go? What are they refusing? We have nothing to offer them. So if we measure how many places do we have and what is the utilization of those places, and as that utilization starts to drop and we have empty beds, then we can start reevaluating things. But for now, we just need a physical place for people to go, and that's got to be part of the system. And I think it's got to be something that we measure both directly and indirectly.
Okay, other comment? I am seeing none at this moment, so let's continue on.
And I also want to share, I know a number of things related to measurement have been raised in today's meeting, and want to confirm that we can carve out time and adjust our schedule for next week's meeting. I've gotten confirmation that our acting chief of community impact officer is able to join to talk through these pieces, so we can bring forward to him what has been raised today, and we can take up again this piece around measurement during next week's session as well to make sure we're adjusting accordingly. But other than that, this actually does take us to the end of the scheduled items for today. Would also uplift, I know in the memo that was provided to the implementation board at your April meeting, we did include the table that walks through the variety of activities. So elements of the plan were included in that packet of materials. And so I wondered, Chair, in the interest of time and having people together, if there's any interest in taking some of that up, or if you would rather stay on schedule for the listed topics for today.
So my thought is if we can continue a little bit, we have some board members here if that's possible. I don't know what the others have to say, but we've carved out 2 hours here and we're kind of down to the point where this is our opportunity to give some input into the final plan. Anybody else?
I would go with that.
I see Juanita has her hand raised.
Yes, Juanita, go ahead.
Just really quick, like I did put some stuff in the chat, just some ideas, and also for future public transportation is people use that riding the bus and the light rail all night when they have nowhere else to go and it's cold. So might want to consider collaborating with Metro and Puget Sound, and the ferries would be a good idea, especially the bus system. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Chalmanek. If I could, I know Board Member Spotted Elk also raised some pieces around tribal partnerships as well, and wanted to give an opportunity to affirm and respond to that request.
Absolutely.
Sub-regional team has made contact and has worked with some of our tribal partners, namely Muckleshoot, as well as Snoqualmie Valley tribe. And that's something that we've been coordinating on as well. So wanted to just affirm the board member that we've been connected for about over a year now and have learned a lot. I know Snoqualmie tribe in particular has had a change in membership recently in terms of just their policy moving away from blood quantum into heritage as a part of eligibility. And so we've been tracking and stay coordinated with their housing stability team and the services they offer. And also wanted to further affirm we've been doing some work with Metro, both with things related to larger planning efforts, and then some of the recent severe weather events we've been coordinating around how we can improve transportation access during severe weather events. So I really appreciate the further tap as we're looking at how we can improve transportation access across the board, and intend to continue working with Metro and our other transportation partners. So just wanted to give that affirmation before we moved on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Also, there's a meeting that the tribes have once a month with the clinics. And I hope that there'll be another opportunity to engage in listening to the communities, because it really is helpful. And I was only fortunate to participate a couple of times.
Amazing. Would love to learn more, board member. That would be amazing to get connected to that space and understand more. Thank you.
Okay, let's push forward for a little while.
Perfect. So I am going to screen share on our website also, so I can point out, as I stated at the top of the meeting, where some of these materials live. So this is, I'm currently on the implementation board page. And so under here, if you go to implementation board and then go to implementation board meetings, you can access information on the system planning committee by clicking actually this button here. And here's where you can see the information from today's meeting. And if you click right here, this is where the materials for today were posted, pages 1 through 26. So just wanted to give that explainer for folks. And we will be updating following this meeting. We'll be posting the recording from this session, as well as posting the next tranche of pages in anticipation for next week's meeting. But I'm going to take us over to the regular implementation board meeting page. And I'm going to just scroll into here, as I believe your meeting on the 12th was where we included the 5-year plan memo. This memo is intended to provide an overview to the board formally on some of the background on the plan, as well as some of the attachments. And the attachments to this memo included the draft years 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 tables, as well as what KCRHA would do with new funding. These were draft, but wanted to put these forward as a part of discussion. And so there's about 20 pages of tables, but this is to get to board member Ross's point around this is the bulk of the plan. Here is what we are going to do to be addressing things up over the next couple of years. And how we've structured these tables, and as we explained during our briefing to the full board in April, is that we've really tried to hone in and connect and really try and, to hone in on what are things within our current budget that we can take up over the next 5 years, and further, under the assumption that we have no increases to programmatic funding, what are things that we could be taking up, and then clearly identifying in the third table what are investment areas. So what would KCRHA do with new funding? What would be the program types we'd be investing in? And so with that explainer, I'm happy to screen share and walk through some of maybe just going 2 pages at a time, briefly walking through. Would that be okay, Chair?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. So under years 1 and 2, we have some of our key actions listed as the following. So we have developing real-time bed availability. This is something across the board we've heard loud and clear, and everybody is really hungry for. And so this is something that we've carried forward, developing that real-time bed availability tool, inclusive of all shelter and emergency housing types. What follows here is then an impact statement. So we included these impact statements that are intended to explain why we're doing this thing and how it drives towards those improving those outcomes that we were talking about. So our impact statement for developing real-time bed availability tools is to really explain that insight into real-time shelter vacancies will allow for greater enrollments into our shelter system at any given time, which will improve our understanding of how many single adults, families, and youth may be accessing the system. For the table on years 1 and 2, we've included this additional column which says status, and we wanted to include this because a number of these things are actually already underway. We've been working on real-time bed availability. This is something that our community impact team has been working on. We've also tagged in the second column, we've included this column called topic areas, where we've tried to do a little bit of tagging in terms of what the kind of themes or the key action concerns. And so this key action is tagged as data and resource availability. With that explainer, I'm going to breeze through the following key actions. I won't read the impact statements for the purposes of wanting to leave time for discussion, but I will go through the key actions and want to just further uplift that these key actions are the variety of initiatives that we have been talking about and have been identified by community partners throughout this very long process, but now they're organized again by what years of the plan they'd be taken up under. And so The following key action is to partner with behavioral health organizations to support connections to our behavioral health services. Then partnering with King County Behavioral Health Recovery Division, Public Health and Healthcare for the Homeless Network to improve communication, coordination, education, and information sharing across a homelessness response system for high acuity individuals. You will see some color coding within the table. Our color coding, we have a descriptor here for folks who want to go back and look, but our rows that are highlighted in yellow represent new initiatives that are different from the previous release, that January release of the plan. And so the following 3 are new initiatives really brought forward from that lengthy and robust feedback process. So these are to work in partnership with local jurisdictions to bolster our regional infrastructure development of homelessness services while maintaining our current level of services in every subregion. Then coordinating with faith-based communities to identify untapped physical spaces to be used in severe weather shelters, identifying and evaluating spaces for severe weather with cities to expand the number of indoor options during severe weather events. The following one here is related to deploying our coordinated severe weather response that incorporates innovative practices in response to immediate needs. Then we have expanding outreach contracts to be appropriately staffed during severe weather events, incorporating allowances for severe weather shelter response into existing contracts to support standardization. And at this point, I'll actually pause here. I'm wondering the best way to go through this, Chair. I can keep going and folks can raise their hand as things come up and I can monitor, or would you rather that I pause right now?
I would say let's keep going, but that's just me. And then let's go, let's get to a point where we can, I don't want to get bogged down in too many comments here, but let's keep going.
Fantastic. Taking us to this line here, aligning with city's comprehensive planning efforts for future development of temporary and permanent housing options, improving our coordination between domestic violence and gender-based violence services in support of families and individuals, enhancing therapeutic support at existing programs, supporting high acuity clients, resourcing outreach with appropriate staffing and pathways to housing options, increasing capacity building support for by and for agencies that are staffed by and serving disproportionately impacted communities in order to support their entrance into and expand into homelessness service work, regularly evaluate the level of funding and percentage of investment into organizations that are designed to support the needs of Black, Native, LGBTQIA2 spirit, immigrant and refugee, people living with disabilities, and people exiting incarceration. Expanding our administrative capacity to support the development of population-specific procurement, particularly focused on emergency housing options for trans and gender nonconforming individuals. Developing funding opportunities for by and for organizations to expand culturally relevant approaches. Expanding outreach tailored to families experiencing homelessness. Developing and implementing a grievance process that is accessible, safe, and responsive to resolve client or funded partner concerns, problems, or complaints. Deploying an effective communication strategy for the Ombuds Office that is well-known and easily accessible, including the creation of centralized contact mechanisms, for example, a hotline, providing regular reports to the implementation board on grievances filed and resolved by the Ombuds Office, including relevant demographic trends in reports filed, standing up an Ombuds Advisory Board, continued improvements to coordinated entry prioritization mechanisms based on sub-regional information, homelessness management information systems data, as well as feedback from people with lived experience, developing administrative capacity to support the advisory committee and their role of advising functions of coordinated entry, reviewing and modifying the design of regional access points programs to improve client experience and access to housing, establishing an equitable procurement process, implementing a phased portfolio reprocurement process with comprehensive geographic coverage, service continuity with housing-focused resources at all points of connection, and close coordination with subpopulation-specific providers. Modifying program reporting requirements to support meaningful data collection that captures system-wide performance outcomes and accounts for the full scope and nature of contracted services. Developing our standards of best practice to be included in contracts when serving the needs of Black, Native, LGBTQIA2 spirit, immigrants and refugees, people living with disabilities, older adults, and people exiting incarceration. designing youth and young adult programs, policies, and practices in partnership with young people to cultivate a sense of self-efficacy and belonging, integrating requirements for healing centered and strengths-based approaches into all KCRHA contracted services, evaluating program requirements to establish flexibility in funding, establishing a King County Youth Action Board composed of a diverse group of youth and young adults with lived experience of homelessness to ensure that the voices of those most affected are centered in developing solutions. This is our first green one, I believe. The green ones marked in green are initiatives that have been consolidated. So this one was captured in a few different initiatives in the previous version, and we've consolidated for clarity. I see a hand from Board Member Ross.
No,
Yes,
your thought,
Christopher, go ahead.
No, Alexis, please finish your thought.
Yeah.
Oh, the thought was just wanting to clarify that the ones marked in green are consolidated from what used to be multiple initiatives into one concise initiative. And this one was to refine and maintain through quarterly updates our regional services database, which includes the homelessness programs within King County to support data-driven planning.
Got it.
So can we actually just pause?
Hold
Go ahead,
on,
Christopher, sorry.
Christopher.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, please.
This may be a bit tactical, but underlying these is, I'm assuming, a business plan to actually make them happen.
Yes, we have project plans for divisions that are taking up this work.
Okay, and then in those project plans, you have estimated delivery dates if they're in, I don't know if you look at them by quarter, by year, but where does all of that live? Is that something that's being reported out in this plan, or is that a supplement document?
That's something that we have internally. We use project management software as we're tracking things such as a stand-up of re-procurement. I know our team uses this for regional services database, and a number of teams use project management software as we're tracking and driving towards these things. We do not have that fully incorporated into the 5-year plan here, and I know there's some identification in the interlocal agreement around annualized work plans, which I think the board could weigh in on wanting to include that level of information in that document.
Okay.
Ben, did you have something?
Yeah, I think, I know we have limited time, and I think that both we and the public can go through and read all of these. So I just thought I might make a more general comment,
Sure.
Which is that these are all good ideas, right? Everything here is a good idea. Some of these things are going to have a direct impact on our goal of ending unsheltered homelessness, and others are just good ideas that will make the organization, the network, and the system stronger. So I think some of these are going to be initiatives directly tied to outcomes, and some of them are going to be more enablers of long-term organizational health. I think on this list, most of these things are enablers, and I think we should really break those out. So we have a specific goal of bringing everybody inside. There needs to be a very small number of initiatives that include things like building more shelter capacity, setting organization-wide standards for what a good shelter looks like. Again, I'm using the term shelter very, very broadly. There needs to be specific initiatives around improving the outreach so that we can very quickly bring people into those shelters as they become available. Those are the things that I will continue to be focused on very, very closely, where we need to have clear dates, milestones. And then I think we can have this very long list of enablers that will help us achieve continuous improvement, greater equity, all those goals that we want to have. But will be hard to tie back to the actual impact of our goal just by the nature of these kinds of initiatives. And I think I like what John was saying earlier about thinking about the press release, right? Like the kind of press release we should be writing is the King County Regional Homelessness Authority commits to reducing unsheltered homelessness by 2,000 people in the next year through the creation of a network of 15 new different types of innovative and high quality shelters, and by improving our matching system to get the right people into the services that they need. Now, those kinds of things would be worthy of a press release. I don't know that other things on this list are going to reach that far, right? supporting training for community members, advocacy groups, and faith-based groups is something we should do. It's not going to have a direct impact to our goal in the immediate term. So I just separated these things out and making sure that we, on the part that's connected to the goal, we have a very, very clear link between the activities and the outcomes that we want to achieve.
And I think, Ben, you were giving that example of 2,000 people as just a concept. It's not actually I want to make sure that someone doesn't take that out of something that was said and that's out of context. That's not a number that is in this particular plan at this moment. I just always
correct.
want to
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Let's see, who, Jaja or Juanita, do you have comment? And then I'll have a comment. I'm not seeing Juanita on my screen at this moment, so I can't tell. And is Simha still with us?
No, Simha in the chat said he had to go. He had another meeting.
Okay. Jaja, did you have anything you wanted to add here?
No, I'm just following, and I disagree with what has been said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So here is something that I would like to see. And it may not be this list, but this list, I think, should help us identify a progress report. If that's a quarterly or a semi-annual progress report. So more than just hasn't started, in motion, it is over the past, and this has accomplished X. In the I'll just give it a semi-annual. This seems to be a very long list to do that with. There may be a couple of ways to narrow that down, but I think that would be helpful to the IB and to the governing board to be able to have that and be able to chart that progress. Quarterly is going to be a lot of work. Semi-annual, less work and probably more progress. But I think that's something that we can talk about as we move forward. And just a thought here. I think Ben brought up there's this point of how many new beds can we create? And what I take away from this is KCRHA may not be creating that many new beds, but we're going to work in partnership with cities, agencies, the religious community and others to create more shelter beds. Am I missing that? Or am I getting that? We'll probably create some too.
Right. And thank you for that, Board Member Chalmanak. And to build on that, there's some language here related to initiatives around alignment with also cities' work in developing their comprehensive plans as jurisdictions around the county are planning for emergency housing. Yes. And so we're really working on how do we align that work, because as we've described in the previous section of the plan, there's a lot also involved in citing new temporary housing options. Working with jurisdictions is a big part of that as we look at then also the funding component. So to that end, yes, there's strong partnership identified here.
Any other comments? Are you at the end of what you wanted to present, or do you have more, Alexis?
There is more here. I don't know how much people want to hear me read, though, to be fair.
I think this is probably a good time for us to take a break. Does anyone have any last comment to raise here? Christopher, looks like you came off of mute. No? Ben or Jaja?
Nothing for me, thank you.
No, nothing for me either.
Okay, I'll go back to something that was said earlier in the meeting. I think the key element of this, if in overall for public to be able to understand what is the difference from the release that happened a couple of months ago to this beginning of the release today, is listening to the public, listening to service providers, listening to those who are homeless, we have turned our focus to getting people off of the street and into shelter. That is the focus of this particular 5-year plan. That doesn't mean that what's been referred to as the $12 billion plan to end homelessness doesn't exist anymore. But a lot of that is going to be done by other agencies in different ways, focused on different types of housing. So, you know, I think this is a good example of an agency that put out a very intelligent, very broad educational piece, I think, as Christopher said. And now we're focused on what I think we should be focused on, which is an implementation piece. And I think that is good. And I think that in general, I think the public is going to appreciate that. And I think all of the elements in the system can appreciate how if we build this system, we can get more people off of the street and get them into at least some form of emergency shelter, where from there they can progress to what I would call success. Any other comments?
Yeah, this is Jaja.
Yeah, Shasha.
You
of
know, I'd
course.
just like to say that, and I'm going to continue to say this, in being homeless with lived experience,
Mhm.
I would like to bring to the table that it is very important to know that homelessness is 365, 24/7. Yet services are not available 365, 24/7. So how are we going to implement that into our 5-year plan? Where I understand that maybe King County Regional Homeless Authority won't be there, but there has to be some form of providers that are available to people at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. You know what I'm saying? It's not if we want to end homelessness, it can't be 9 to 5, 8 to 5 kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So there needs to be services available to people at odd hours of the night and odd hours of the morning. I like to say that, and I liked what Ben was saying. I just want to ditto that about having enough places to put people, because we know we don't. And how are we going to bring those people who can help us with that situation? You know, developers, other affordable housing providers, you know what I mean? Because you need to transition out of homelessness into something. And we have the SAs out there doing what they need to do. But at the same time, you need to have shelters available for those that are coming. And we know that with the hoteling, you know, there's just not enough. I'd like to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shasha. Other comment? Seeing none, I think our next meeting is next. Well, wait a minute. We will have. I'm trying to figure out where we are. We will. Our next meeting will be next Thursday. That'll be the System Review Committee. Then after that, we will be having the full IB board on the 10th of May. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then we're looking at a special meeting on the 19th. Is that correct? Still to be determined, but.
I am seeing, so if I may, Chair,
Sure.
I'll do a readout of our next steps. So your
Okay.
next meeting for Thursday, yes, is on May 4th, starting at 3 o'clock. We'll be taking up the activities tables. So what we started walking through here, as well as talking through years 3 and 5. I also want to voice, per the feedback of this group today, we're going to have a carve out of 30 minutes where we'll be bringing back the Chief Community Impact Officer. So talking about what we can do around data, so we can adjust next week's agenda accordingly to make sure that we're circling back on some of the pieces raised around measurement. Your regular implementation board meeting is scheduled for May 10th, where there'll be an update and an update from this subcommittee, but also leaving it open for whatever the board would like to bring up and for a full board discussion related to the 5-year plan, if there's a topic related to it. And then you all will be meeting on the following day, the 11th, where the discussion items are the latter half of the plan related to resources, what KCRHA currently funds, reprocurement, transforming what we fund, and what KCRHA would do with new funding. You all are slated then for a subcommittee action on the 18th to vote to recommend a revised version to the implementation board. And then per my notification by the clerk, so looking at Austin at how we're scheduling a special meeting. Austin, is there anything you want to share on the special meeting scheduling?
It is going to be Friday, May 19th from 1 to 3. It should be, I'm uploading it as we speak to the website. That's what I've been doing off of camera. But yeah, so it will be on the 19th. Agenda will be released about 7 days before. So yeah. And we also have the meeting on the 10th as well, the regular IB meeting.
Okay, so that gives a schedule. I always note subject to change and what happens. So is there anything else that we need to bring up, Alexis? I don't think so.
I've taken careful notes on the feedback from what the board has put forward. So we'll be doing a write-up on some of the changes here. As we look towards putting out a revised version, we're going to be moving towards having kind of a striker format from now on. So being able to clearly mark and track changes, what the effective changes are based on what we've released.
So we are going to do one in track changes.
Yes.
Okay.
And can provide more updates on document release at your meeting next week.
Okay, that's perfect. Any objection to adjournment?
No, encouraged.
I agree with you. Seeing no objection and with that encouragement, I'll declare our committee meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Facilitating.
Thank you, everyone.